The last part of Workshop 1 is some more specific advice on how to craft a successful proposal for the Graduate Research Fellowship Program. We have worked with over 60 students from LSU who have received the NSF Graduate Fellowship, and if we summarize those, the undergraduate grade point averages typically range from 3.1 to 4.0, although above 3.5 was a lot more common. Most of the successful applicants had some undergraduate research, all had extracurricular activities, they were involved with their communities, all worked very hard on their applications, so it is pretty typical to have at least 6 drafts or more of each of the 2 essays that you have to put together for this application. That's really common. And then about half the students who received the fellowship got it on their second try. So, or even their third try. Unfortunately, there aren't any more third tries. So you do get 2 shots now if you apply as an undergraduate. So what those students were able to do is use the feedback from the reviewers to create an even stronger application, and that increased their chances for funding the next. The ideal candidate for an NSF Graduate Fellowship is a Renaissance scholar, as someone who has fully addressed the intellectual merit and broader impacts criteria in their application, and someone who is reflective. So the way to think about applying for NSF is this. Everyone is going to have good grades, strong experience, and excellent personal character. So how are you going to set yourself apart from the other applicants? And the way to do that is to be reflective. So we're going to spend a few slides talking about what that means. So most of us in our lives tend to focus on concrete experience, the what of what we're doing in our lives. So we strongly encourage you to go beyond that concrete experience in both of the statements that you're writing for the fellowship. You always want to use 3 questions in terms of being reflective. So what is just a description of the experience. Then there's so what. Why is that important? So you want to talk about what you have learned as a result of your experiences, both as a scholar and personally. And the now what is how you're going to take that forward. So you want to be explicit about how your experiences and what you learned from it, in other words, the what and the so what, brings you to where you are now and where you plan to go in the future. So we created some reflection prompts for both essays that you would construct for the fellowship application. So on the left column, you've got your reflection prompts of your the 3 questions that make up this particular reflection model, the what, the so what, and the now what. And then topic statements or ideas that can help you to address those questions to be reflective in your essay. So the proposed research statement that you're going to write, you really are trying to just prove to your reviewers that you know how to do research. And these are some of the topic statements that would help you to prove not only that you know how to do research, but you're thinking about the research process as you are doing it. So the what, again, this is the concrete experience. In other words, the objectives of this research are, or the hypothesis of this project is. The so what would be something like the anticipated results of this study are, or I believe that my hypothesis is going to be proved true because, and then you fill in the rest. The now what is how you're moving forward. In the proposed project, I anticipate potential problems with something. It might be measurement limitations, it might be statistical interactions or something. If you encounter these problems, here's how I'm going to solve them. That shows a reader that you are thinking about research as you're conducting it. You know that there might be issues and you know how to address those. Another nice now what question would be the implication of this study is. Why is it important to your field? Why is it important to society? The other statement that you're going to write is your personal relevant background and future goals statement. And so again, using that same reflection model with the what, so what, and now what prompts. Some of the topic statements or ideas in this personal relevant background and future goals statement might be For the what, again, your concrete experience. What's your story? How did you become interested in your discipline? What did you do in terms of a research experience, for example, or a community service experience? The so what, from that concrete experience, here's what I learned. Here's what I learned about research itself. Here's what I learned about the practice of research. Here's what I learned about myself. Here's what I learned about society. And then your now what would be my research philosophy. My personal philosophy is my future plans are these, and they're critical to my discipline because of XYZ. So those are the kinds of questions that if you seek to answer, you're going to show your readers, the reviewers who are going to decide if you have funding or not, that you really are extremely thoughtful about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that is how you set yourself apart from other applicants who tend to focus mostly on the what. So in terms of how to prepare the best application, for that graduate research essay or your proposed research, it really is the most important part of your application. And so we encourage you to focus especially on intellectual merit. So again, those two major criteria that reviewers are using to decide if they're going to fund you or not, the graduate research essay is intellectual merit heavy. Don't forget that there is a broader impact statement that is required, but you really want to focus on intellectual merit, meaning you're really just trying to prove to your readers, your reviewers, that you know how to do research. So to do that, you essentially are going to write a mini paper, single-spaced, in 2 pages. The title and keywords may not be part of those 2 pages. The program solicitation was not clear on that this year. In past years, the title and keywords have appeared as boxes that have not counted toward the 2-page limit, but this year they made some changes, and I honestly do not know right now if the title and keywords are part of the 2 pages or not, but you'll know when you get onto the application to see that. Remember, everything this year has also changed. It all has to be 11 point, all of it, which is a change from last year. Anyway, these are the suggested sections. So you're going to have your title of your proposed research and the keywords. You're going to have some introduction and background information, which should include a testable hypothesis or research objectives or aims, and the language that you use tends to be specific to your discipline. You'll have a section on materials and methods, and these are the materials and methods that you're going to use to test your hypothesis or your research objectives or aims. Reference standard materials or methods as much as you can. It proves to the researcher that you know, or the reviewer, that you know how to do research. You definitely want to have a section on expected results and potential pitfalls. In other words, you do a set of experiments and hopefully the results are perfect on the first try. I have found that rarely to be the case for me. And so sometimes something goes wrong and you want to think about what those potential pitfalls are and how you might address them so that you can ultimately get expected results that you can reproduce and you can publish. You're going to have an intellectual merit statement and a broader impact statement. These can be anywhere from a sentence a piece to 2 or 3 sentences a piece. And then you've got your references. You are allowed to abbreviate like crazy on the reference. Some of the pitfalls you want to avoid with that graduate research statement. I have served as a reviewer for a number of years, so have a number of the folks on our research team, and so collectively we see that the most common mistake in this proposed research essay is to spend much too much space on the introduction. And then you tend to skip over or not have enough room to cover the other sections in those 2 pages. So I would try to make sure that you spend no more than half a page, and maybe even less, on that introduction, so that you do have time to talk about your expected results. That is the other common pitfall, is that people either skip over the expected results entirely or they sort of gloss over them. And just remember, in research, results are really the name of the game, and so the whole reason you're doing the research is to get results. So you want to make sure that you spend some time on that in your graduate research statement. And again, don't forget about being a reflective practitioner in terms of taking your expected results step a little bit further. In other words, you can explicitly tie that expected result back to your objectives or your aims or your hypothesis, and you should. The other main statement that you've got is the personal relevant background and future goals statement. And this is where you can amp up some of the broader impacts parts of your application. We strongly encourage you to get personal. In other words, share who you are, your personal character and experiences in the context of your passion to do research. And again, don't just talk about what you've done. That's the what, and that's important. But keep going to the so what and then now what. In other words, here's all the things that you've done. How does that impact your philosophy on research or on life? What sort of impact do you want to have on science and the public and society and culture through your research? If you've not completed a formal undergraduate research experience, you have to really try to frame your prior work in terms of research or in terms of discovery. You want to show that all the experiences that you've had prove that you know how to move forward in life as a scholar, that you'll be able to do research through your experiences, and realize too that this personal statement also has to have explicit mention of intellectual merit and broader impacts. So those specifically need to be mentioned. Again, whether a statement each, a sentence apiece, or two. So the most common issue that students tend to have with the personal statement that I typically hear goes something like, I've had a normal life. I haven't had a parent die. I haven't overcome a significant problem yet. How am I supposed to write a successful personal statement? And what I would encourage everyone would be to think about your statement being compelling. It doesn't have to be dramatic. If it is dramatic, that's fine, but it doesn't have to be dramatic to be successful. What it does need to be is compelling. So I'm going to tell you a story from my life, from my professional life, that is not dramatic, but it is compelling. So if you look at the picture on the right, you see a playground for pre-kindergarten kids. I do playground design in my professional life. And this is for 60 kids. And if you notice, there's a little thing we call a bucket ball on the right-hand side. There is a geodesic dome to the left of that, and over on the left side of that picture, where there are people standing, there is a small rusty red gate, which you can see zoomed in on the left-hand picture. So my students and I were working with this school community to bring a new playground to the school. And we nicknamed that rusty red gate the gate to nowhere, because take a look at it. So we worked with the school for months and came up with a great design based on what the kids were interested in. And then one day I asked the principal, what is the story of that gate? And she said, well, it used to be the entryway to some play equipment that had to be removed for safety purposes, but whoever took out the play equipment at that point did not take out the gate. But it's the kids' favorite piece of equipment on the playground. And I was shocked by that, taking a look at the other two pieces, which I know weren't much, but why a gate would be more fun than a bucket ball or a geodesic dome climber was sort of a mystery to me. So I asked, why? And she said, because the teachers, the pre-kindergarten teachers every day at recess, line the kids up in front of that gate and ask them, where do you want to go today? Anywhere in the universe. And the children take turns running through that gate, and they scream where they're going as they run through it. So for me, this was a real shocker, because I had really made a bad assumption about this rusty red gate to nowhere. It was really a portal to anywhere. And it was the best piece of equipment on what is, look at it, a very sparse playground. So for me, this was a great big lesson in not making assumptions. And so, and a great lesson, I think, in the spirit of education, and teachers who were determined to really have kids exercise their playful spirit and imagination, despite the fact that their playground was not nearly as good as even the little one for a single family across the barbed wire fence that you see on that picture on the right. So, for me, this really made me remember to make sure that I know the stories behind all the pieces of equipment on a playground, because even if it doesn't look like much to me, it might mean everything to the community. I'm happy to say that we got a great big grant and we redid this entire playground, but we left that gate, that portal to anywhere, on the playground. I would say to you that this statement, this story I just told you, is compelling. It's not dramatic. A rusty red gate just sitting there is not dramatic at all. It's actually pretty undramatic. But the importance that it had to that community and the lessons that it taught me as a playground designer and an engineer are critically important. So again, that's sort of what you really need to do with a personal statement. What are the things that matter to you that led you to where you are now? It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just needs to be compelling. For both of your statements or essays, we really encourage you to connect the dots when you are writing. In other words, we tend to sort of write in a particular direction and hope that the reader is going to follow us. You don't want to just set out those dots and hope that the reader is going to follow you. You're going to connect them too. So you want to be really explicit. The intellectual merit of this proposed research is, the broader impacts of this research are, and you say what they are. The folks who are reviewing these generally don't have a whole lot of time to review, and they usually have about 30 applications to review. So you want to make it as simple and clear as possible what you want that reader to get from your application. So you don't want to overdo it, but at the same time, you really want your reviewer to think that you can change the world with your work. So here's an example of connecting the dots. So this was a student who was writing part of a personal statement. It says, my career path was inspired through my personal experiences with the Muscular Dystrophy Association, MDA. I became involved with MDA at the age of 8 when I was diagnosed with Charcot-Marie-Tooth CMT disease. CMT is a neuromuscular disease that affects the peripheral nerves and causes muscle weakness and atrophy, tightness in muscles and joints, and some loss in sensation of the feet and hands. Through the generosity of others' time and monetary gifts, I was able to attend summer camp for 1 week every year. I remember my first year at camp and realizing how lucky I was as I got to know the other campers. I had a lot of pain and wore leg braces, but I was not in a wheelchair. My goal is to design and create assistive medical devices, particularly orthotics and prosthetics, that will allow those with physical limitations to lead a life free of confinement and ultimately result in children being active participants in activities instead of watching from the sidelines. So I think this is a pretty strong draft because this student is talking about a personal experience and how that personal experience led her to her goal. This is the same statement with a couple of more words added in. And these couple of, I should say, sentences or parts of sentences really make very explicit the connecting the dots piece of things. So it starts the same way. My career path was inspired through my personal experiences. It talks about going to camp, remembering the first year, realizing how lucky I was. The reflective piece is, camp made me more aware of what I could do, but also more aware of what some of my peers could not. That's a reflective statement. I thought about this based on my experience, and this is what I thought about. This is the truth I came to. This knowledge, this truth, fired my career goal, and the rest of it is the same. So as you start working through your statements, try to find those transition points and connect them directly the way that these two sentences connect experience to career goal. You really want to try to prepare your best application. By the time you are ready to hit submit on this application, it should be the best thing you've ever written in your life. So I strongly encourage y'all to start now. And one way to think about that is this. The fellowship, if you are funded, is worth about $28,000 per page of essay that you write. In other words, 5 pages, 2 for the proposed research statement, 3 for the personal relevant background and future goals statement. It's $28,000 per page of essay. So you want to put in that kind of effort. You should choose your recommendation letter writers carefully. Provide them with a full resume, copies of your essays, and the directions that NSF has to reference letter writers. And there are a lot of directions. You want to make sure that the reference knows you well. You probably want to have some of them be able to talk about your academics and your research. A common question is, can I have somebody write about who I am personally or something that I did beyond research? And the answer is yes. I would encourage you to ask at least 4 people to contribute letters. Only 3 will be part of your application. You would get to choose which 3 people that you think can write you the best letter, but you always want to have an alternate just in case someone turns one in late, and you really want to have 3 letters count for your application. So these are all the specifics that your references are going to need to write you a strong letter. There are a lot of requirements. You're going to give them that link. These are all of the things that the letter should have. I know you don't have to worry too much about these specifically, other than the idea that the information that you give them, especially your statements, are going to help them answer these questions. You should get feedback on your application. So try to find mentors, editors, and critics who are going to critique your essays. If you have a research mentor, I'd strongly encourage you to get feedback from them. But remember, it's not just people inside your discipline. Maybe your peers in your research lab and your advisor, I think, are very important if you have them. But even your family members, if a person or a friend of yours who's outside your discipline, because they're going to be able to also read that to make sure that they can sort of follow it and understand it. They may not know all the jargon, but they should be able to follow the process. So try to get feedback from as many different people as you can. Don't forget about our team with this research, this workshop series. We have a lot of folks who are here to help you. Depending on your discipline, you can look at the 4 people in the top of that slide. And then if you are involved in any of the programs described in the bottom half of the slide, you can contact those people. So we are all here to serve you, and please make good use of us. It is going to be really agonizing for you to fit all the information that you need to into your 2 essays. So, so that process can be agonizing when you get down to it and you're like, oh, I'm 2 sentences short. And again, CXC labs and all of us who work with these are very good at helping you cut out excess words. But on the other side of that, make sure you use all the space allotted to you for each essay. As a reviewer of these applications, there is no worse buzzkill than seeing that a person left a whole half a page of empty space on a personal statement. So make sure you use all of that space. If you have co-authored a referee journal article, that is great. It's really seen as a feather in your cap. It is not required, but it is a wonderful thing. There's a box at the beginning of the application where you put in all of your presentations and publications, and so you would really highlight that in there. And again, don't forget that you're going to be doing multiple drafts, and that is perfectly fine and really what you're shooting for. We strongly suggest that you read successful applications. If you Google example NSF graduate fellowship and see what comes up, there's a site at the University of Cincinnati, there's another site at the University of Illinois. And then again, if you have already applied, make sure that you address the comments from the proposal review. Here are several hyperlinked resources on writing in case you want to consult those and you need some more guidance specifically with regard to writing. One of the members of our workshop team, Dr. Matt Hyatt, is an NSF graduate fellowship winner himself and has these following tips, which are outstanding. In other words, ask your research advisor for an example of a successful grant, which can help you to get familiar with the style of proposal writing. You can check out essays of former awardees. Again, on that previous slide, you can consult those university sites. Don't forget, as you are looking at essays of former awardees, that the personal essay is really about you. So make sure you certainly are reading the former awardees' essays for structure and ideas of how they were put together, but you're not going to tell their story, you're going to tell yours. And notice he's got bolded, have a little fun on the personal statement. Character and voice are certainly rewarded. You've already submitted your boring resume. You know, everyone's got the resume, everybody's got that proposed research. But you really want to try to tell the reviewer something that they can't gather from that information, something about you and how you're going to change the world, at least the world inside your discipline. Matt also has spoken with previous LSU fellowship winners, and we're actually, again, going to have a panel discussion with some of these winners so you can speak to them yourself, and more information on that is going to be coming on the LSU Discover website. But these are some of their suggestions. You are not beholden to your topic for the research statement. You can write about anything you know. If you have experience in the topic, it's going to help. Asking your letter writers to address specific things in their letters. And so if you feel like there's something special about you that makes you stand out in your record, ask your letter writers to write about it. Because you only have 2 pages in that graduate research essay, you don't have time to propose more than one study. So stick to one thing and do it well. Again, get as many people as possible to read your application. Find out who writes endorsement letters from LSU for Goldwater and Fulbright applications. That person is on the workshop team. So again, you really can contact anybody on our workshop team for that type of review. Fill up space. Don't leave any white spaces on your essays. Be quantitative whenever possible. Talked a lot about teaching experience, and I had their GPA outcomes and knew exactly how many students I supported. I got specific reviewer feedback about those numbers. There is a box where you input basically a CV. It just says to list awards and accomplishments or something, but I spoke with someone who is a GRFP reviewer panelist who said that in the panels they take this spot very seriously, don't neglect it, and propose to expand what you're already doing if you can and if you're interested in it. So I think to continue to do is a good way to move forward if you want in that direction. So good luck. We strongly encourage you to get started now. The first thing you're going to have to do is create an account on research.gov. You can go to that hyperlink and it'll show you what to do to set up your application for the NSF GRFP. And so you want to contact your reference letter writers now to let them know that essays are coming. Ask them if they're willing to review for you. And again, the workshop team is so excited to be working with you all this semester, and we look forward to seeing you in person or online or both. Y'all take care. We'll see you soon.